I watched Project Hail Mary after reading the book, so here are my honest thoughts. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm talking about Project Hail Mary, the 2026 movie directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller of Jump Street fame, starring Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace. I was able to see the movie early, so this is going to be my honest, spoiler-free thoughts on the film. Before I get into this, though, hit that like button, comment down below your thoughts on the movie or the book if you've read it, and of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 200,000 subscribers here on the channel. It'll mean quite a bit. But I want to give you some backstory as to my relationship with Project Hail Mary. As you can see right here, I have the book displayed behind me. That is because I actually ordered and read the book in the weeks leading up to me seeing this movie for the first time. I said, you know what? Enough is enough. Oftentimes I'll set goals, I want to read this book before this movie comes out, and I just never did it. And I was like, I got to do this for Project Hail Mary. I have to. The movie looks sick. It's a must. And so I finally sat down, read all 476 pages in about 12 days, so I spread it out a little bit. And it's the first time in a long time, genuinely probably 10 plus years, where I've read a book before seeing a book to movie adaptation, like in preparation. And so this was an interesting experience for me because I just hadn't done that in so long. And so honestly, it was slightly jarring at first because my imagination ran wild reading the book, and I was like, this is how it's going to look on the big screen, and this is how it's going to look. And they did certain things similarly, and then others I could have never have imagined the direction they took them in. And so I was like, this is exciting because I have this whole world I can play around with when I read the book. But then there's now a movie adaptation that's like a very faithful adaptation to the book, but makes little changes to like the order of events or the amount of detail that's gone into with, say, some of the science experiments or the pacing, for example. But it's really fascinating when I sit back and say, yeah, every book to movie adaptation changes things up, and I can just appreciate this movie's text to screen adaptation, like how they, the directors, the producers, the writers, how they interpreted reading Andy Weir's novel. And it really is imaginative, right? The world of Project Hail Mary is real. It feels lived in, and it's scary. The concept for this movie, for those who don't know, is basically that the sun is dying and Project Hail Mary is this mission to save Earth. I will spare you the details. I don't want to say too much. I think it's best to go in as fresh as possible, but the character of Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, is of course the main character of the film, and he wakes up in space with really no memory of why he's there, and so via flashbacks, he sort of recollects, oh, that's what happened, and it's filling us, the audience, in along the way as well. The book does this, the movie does this. I think it's a great way to tell a story to keep the audience engaged from beginning to end, because the whole entire 2.5-hour runtime, you're wondering, how is he here? Why is he here? And you get the backstory sort of fed to you through flashbacks while still feeling the stakes of the end of the world mission that he's on. And when I say this movie feels real, it's because the visual effects are truly a marvel. I'm not just sitting here BSing you. You could say that with a lot of modern day films and animation or live action. Oh, they look gorgeous, they look beautiful, and it's true most of the times, but this is truly an achievement in my opinion, because allegedly there are no green screen shots used in this film, and I buy that. A lot of it looks extremely practical or just like highly polished CGI. In fact, you can't really tell what looks computer generated and what looks real because it all flows together so seamlessly. Genuinely, this feels like a real world mission. Borderline, you're watching real events because of how authentic the visuals look. The movie's actually shot by Greg Fraser, who of course is the cinematographer of The Batman. Need I say more? Because there's no clear and obvious CGI, and because of how realistic so many of these set pieces, from the Hail Mary ship itself to the planets and stars, everything just looks so authentic that you become immersed as an audience member into this sci-fi epic and can't help but feel bought into this story more than you would have if it were sort of cheap throwaway CGI that you would see on, like, you know, a straight to Redbox movie or something like that. But the main man himself is Ryland Grace. He's played by Ryan Gosling, and to me this just further cements Gosling's legacy. I think he's been a star for a long time now. I mean, think back to the 2010s, he got his first Oscar nomination. Then he has his turn in La La Land where he's incredible. He's always showed up and been a leading man, but this really solidifies him as not just a one-trick pony. He can do it all here, right? There are, of course, those signature Ryan Gosling moments with his humor and his just inherent wit, where he delivers a line so cleverly and with so much charm, or just enough sarcasm that you bust out laughing in the audience. Like, he's gonna get you laughing, maybe even belly laughing at times. There were some big laughs in the theater here, but at the same time, he's a damaged individual. He's lonely, and this movie does tackle themes of isolation out in space, but also just loneliness in society, looking for a friend, you know, yearning for that connection, that deeply human connection that we all aspire to have. And so he does it all, right? He'll get you. He'll get the tears flowing. I won't lie. You really feel for this guy who's alone out in space. And mild spoilers, it's all over the trailers and it's in the book. I will just say he's not alone for this whole movie. He does develop a companionship with Rocky, who is from elsewhere, and they both have the same mission in mind. So these two beings are out in space. They're alone. It's the first time we're seeing alien life from Ryland's POV, and the same can be said for Rocky. And so they develop this beautiful camaraderie throughout the film that really is the heart, the anchor of this story. And their relationship is just inspiring. It's very sweet. I'm not comparing Rocky to a pet in this sense, but the relationship they have is kind of like that of a movie where, you know, a guy will get a dog for the first time and he's like trying to communicate with it or train it. These two different species from completely different backgrounds, completely different cultures, but they're learning to get along and adapt to one another. But I mean, thematically speaking, this movie does have a dark underlying message of where we might be headed as a planet, because times can get scary, you know? You could apply it to climate change. You could say, oh, the future's scary, but there's still a lot of optimism at the core of this film that surrounds it. And in fact, it kind of inspires hope, in my opinion. It's like, hey, things could get bleak. Things might get dark, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like this movie reminds us that as humans, that we're never too far gone. There's always hope. And I feel like this is a reminder to stay positive, even in the darkest of times. Through this sci-fi space epic and Ryan Gosling's performance and Phil Lord and Chris Miller's direction, and of course, like the camaraderie between Rocky and Ryland, you're able to buy in and feel good by the time the credits roll. This movie is like almost a reminder, hey, life's worth living to the fullest. Embrace those around you, love those around you, and fight for what you believe in. So it's a very inspiring, hopeful movie. Yes, you've got your signature sci-fi moments where you're on a ship out in space trying to enact an intense mission, and the score ramps up very Interstellar-esque at times, and you're just like thrilled in the moment. But you also have those sweeter emotional moments that kind of touch on what it means to be human and how far one would be willing to go to save everyone, to save an entire species. So it's very powerful at the same time, while still managing to balance some of that humor and levity as well. Having read the book, I will say I do prefer the book. I feel like that's what people say 99% of the time. To me, it just dives in a little more on some of the science experiments. I don't know how viewers who haven't read the book feel, but to me, reading through the book, like there would be chunks of pages where it's like challenging the reader to really dive in to the science behind every little inkling of the experiment with the astrophage and all the other terminology that I won't throw around in this review. It felt rewarding as a reader to be like, oh my gosh, I read through all this setup and now I fully understand. And in the movie, it doesn't zoom through or kind of fly by, but I guess it just feels that way by comparison because of how dense the book can get at times with the scientific explanations. And so the movie, I understand, has to translate it a little differently because it has to be something that every audience member can get on board with. And so they don't spend as much time diving into the physical science behind a lot of the, you know, different parts of the film, I'll say, like, especially in the third act, I feel like there are some things where in the book, they do thorough explanations of why something goes wrong, and in the movie, they kind of gloss over it a little bit, but it's not that big of a knock, in my opinion. I was also interested to see what story changes they made. They made, like, little tweaks to characters. I feel like Dr. Strat, for example, or Strat, if you will, in the movie, has this warmth to her, whereas in the book, you could view her character as being a little colder. And so they made like these little changes that didn't change the identity of the film or the story. Like the structure and the bones of the story remain the same. There were just little character tweaks they made that I kind of appreciated in retrospect for the movie. And I like how they both kind of have their own voice at times. It's the same message, it's the same story, right? At the end of the day, with the same characters who go on the same journey, but there are little differences that make you appreciate the movie more at times and the book more at times. So all around, I enjoyed the hell out of the experience. I would say for me, Project Hail Mary is probably my favorite movie of the year. It's like a strong 4.5 out of 5. If you want a sci-fi epic that has a lot of humor and heart and is rewarding to sit through for 2.5 hours, go for it. Go check this one out. I didn't get to see it in IMAX. I have a ticket booked to go see it in IMAX because I think it deserves that big screen. There's one sequence in particular in the third act, or I'll say middle of the movie roughly, where you're sitting there and you're like, man, this needs to be on the biggest screen possible. That probably is going to be the scene that everyone talks about from this movie, the one that we remember for years to come from Project Hail Mary. It's just one of those movie-going moments where you're like in awe of how they pulled this off. It's just a visual feast, genuinely. But Gosling, again, crushes it. I wonder if this movie could have some power at the Oscars. Will it land any noms? On the technical side of things, absolutely. But will it get nominated for Best Picture, maybe? It's a bit too early to tell. Could Gosling snag a nomination? Again, way too early to tell, but never say never, I guess. all in all, I'm glad I read the book. I do prefer the book, but I'm glad this adaptation exists, and I think that it is one of the best movies of the year, and it could very well go down as one of the best by the time December rolls around. I think it's going to have staying power. I think it's one of those movies that will grow on me more and more as time goes by, because like I said, I hadn't read a book before seeing a movie of the book in a long time. So it was just a unique experience for me. So now that I know exactly what to expect going into the movie, when I see it a second time and I can sort of differentiate it from the book and view it almost as its own story that's based on the book, I think I'll enjoy it even more. And so yeah, those are my honest thoughts on Project Hail Mary. What do you guys think if you've seen it, if you've read the book? Let me know what you think down below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Be on the lookout for more videos coming very soon. But thank you guys as always for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.